Let's talk about the access to therapy. Is it available to everyone?
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Yeah. Okay.
How does one
Yes. Yes.
become aware of it? Where, like,
Right.
in the community and, like...
Right. Because I think about just the inequities that are in every system. And so our medical system is not immune to that.
Right.
And so that has looked like a distrust of the healthcare system for a lot of people. That has looked like, I think there are a lot of layers to that. The short answer is and should be, I mean, yes. It's, there's kind of, there's a lot of discussion in the therapy world about therapists who decide to take insurance or not.
Okay.
And from our side as therapists, the relationship with therapists and insurance companies, I mean, it's super funky. There's so much red tape, and they want to be so involved in a patient's or client's treatment to the point where we don't take insurance because that doesn't feel good. I don't want insurance to tell me you can have this number of sessions with a client. Okay. Going back to what we just said, right. That doesn't allow me to meet the client where they are.
Right.
Or to be involved in the treatment plan. So we have a model where we are self-pay. The client can submit for out-of-network reimbursement, so there can still be some reimbursement. That's so we can offer pro bono or reduced fee services for
like
people who need it.
Scale. Okay.
For people who need it. So that's kind of the model that a lot of therapists use, and people don't really understand why.
Right.
But and some of it is about respecting our time. That insurance requires just like ridiculous amounts of paperwork or whatever that isn't ever reimbursed and takes away from client care and all sorts of layers. So, and there are some really great foundations and open path I think is what it's called for very low fee. But again, it's getting the word out there.
That it's available to you at a cost that's affordable for you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, I think there are a lot of good people doing work to try to figure out how to make that more known and more accessible. So it's, again, I think that's one of those slow turns as we look at just systemic issues, that it's definitely a part of that. And then hoping that more and more funding continues to come along for mental health care and research too.
Funding from
the government,
okay.
I mean, it just kind of is like anything where it's just, it feels like, well, not like anything. It hasn't necessarily been a priority in the way that I think it should be.
So we do like cancer walks and things like we need a therapy.
So there are some mental illness, like NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, but nobody knows about it. I know about it because that's my world, but
I have no clue.
Different walks for different, I specialize in eating disorders, so we have an eating disorder awareness walk, like things like that, but it's very tight group of people because, not many people know about it. And then who's going to get out there, again, with the stigma? There's going to be that like, oh, should I get out and walk for the, and that's just sad.
That is very sad.
Yeah, but it's turning.
It is turning. What can we do to eradicate the stigma?
Keep talking. Like these conversations, I'm telling you, I don't care if I keep popping up everywhere. Like that's because it's not about me. Like this is about ending the stigma and getting people talking. So people sharing stories, that's huge because it makes it more real and relatable versus what we said earlier where it's a little bit, it can be scary or violent or whatever those things, ideas that people have in their head about what mental illness is. So talking about it, being aware of the language, and not being afraid to name things when you notice something is destigmatizing. I started a podcast and trying to I interview recognizable people because to me that's one way in where if you think about all the judgments we lay on other humans, like she has it all together and look at that perfect life and that all the things that come from knowing the person on social media or in the media, right? And so these people that have been so willing to be open and vulnerable with their stories around mental health, because we all have stories.
We do.
And that's why I tell everybody, like, it doesn't mean that you necessarily even have a diagnosable clinical disorder, but anxiety or stress, grief, fear, the human experience. And so anyway, so these people being willing to share their stories makes it a little bit more accessible, I guess, kind of breaks that down a little bit. So I think things like that help.
Because we do use social media to like, it's our highlight reel. So we should highlight all the parts, not just the good parts, but the parts that are in progress and in work, you know?
Because that's
And
authentic.
that's real and that's genuine. And I'm going to really feel more connected to that. That's going to feel, you know, tangible and attainable. And like, oh, you do therapy? I can do therapy? We can do therapy?
That's right.
Right.
And there is, I mean, like this, there are some funny hashtags out there, like therapy is cool, therapy is dope. Like, you know, where it's
Right.
like, and I don't even, like this,
Yep.
loud and proud, loud and proud. Like this is my new thing. Like I've got my coffee mug over there that says it. Like, just I don't know, like just normalizing it. It's nothing wild. Like it's just you go to the doctor when you hurt yourself. Okay, you know, you go to PT when you've hurt yourself to you know rehab, get better.
Right.
Our mental
Allergy
health, we need to
specialist.
tend to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you see, you're right. There's a specialist for all the things.
Yeah.
So why not our mental health?
That's right. And it does help when you, I think you think about like, do I have to lay on a couch and like talk to some old guy in a chair? Like that's how, like it used to definitely be
That's
in the
how
media
we treat
too.
it on, you know, in the movies and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm
But
like,
nope.
like it can be very chill and casual and conversational and still get a lot of work done.
How long is a session?
Usually about 45, 50 minutes.
Okay. So you just, an hour of your day, y'all. An hour of your day.
Yes. And because we're out of network, we're super flexible too. So sometimes I'll do 30-minute sessions or, you know, phone check-ins, depending. I mean, there's that beauty of having some flexibility and creative license around what somebody needs too. So, and now we have this hybrid of being virtual and in person, which helps with accessibility as well.
Right.
You know, so I think all of these things are leading towards it being utilized more. I feel that.
Yeah. You mentioned language, to like knowing the language, and you said a couple words earlier that I'm not sure if people are going to understand what that means. And if you're in therapy, you get it. You said trigger. So what's a trigger?
Okay.
Like let's talk
Yes.
a little bit more of some of these
something.
vocab words so people won't be afraid to like, what did you just ask me?
No, that's great. Yes, thank you, because I am in that world. But something that elicits a response in you, I guess, like maybe a visceral response, or sets off negative thought patterns or spiral, triggers sets off some kind of behavioral response, and that might come from a traumatic experience, or it could just be, you know, a comment somebody makes, but it taps into something in your brain that's, you know, part of your narrative around negative self-esteem, for example, and it kind of sets you in this shame spiral. So anything that kind of elicits, does that make
it does.
Yeah.
There was another one that slipped me, but I just feel like there's sometimes we'll hear, you know, just the talk in the conversation, and then it shuts us down because it's not a familiar, you know, world of language.
I'm so glad you said that. I had somebody very close to me tell me, like, that just sounds like a bunch of psychobabble. And and that hit me some kind of way, because that is my language. It's the way that it's authentic to me to use vulnerable language. But what you're saying, is that it's accessible and relatable in a way to just the regular person who hasn't gone through some sort of mental health exploration, I guess. So I like how you put that, but that it can feel intimidating.
It does when you don't understand the language, and I think that's another reason why we need to normalize therapy. And if we are constantly having these conversations amongst our friends, and you know, the language would become familiar, and it wouldn't be so scary, and we would want to like delve into it more, because then we would have like a baseline of like understand, like okay, I see what you're saying. Yes,
and
it's
I think
that fear of unknown.
That's
the fear of the unknown.
That's exactly right. And because something I said earlier, where people might be like, well, I don't want to uncover all that stuff. So some people are like, well, then I'm not going if it's going to do all that. And so that's again why you have to have that trust and rapport with your therapist. That if we touch on something that we won't go there. That's why I say you're the expert. You guide me. I meet you where you are. I figure out if nudging is appropriate or whatever it might be. And the uncovering doesn't always happen either. It's not like there have to be dark, scary things or anything like that. But that fear of the unknown, of just vulnerability, it's hard. It's hard. And that's why it's the bravest thing, but it's hard and scary. And, you know, if there's like one thing that anybody takes away from this conversation, is therapy is not about I can't make things go away, and I don't want to. You know, like I think about that movie, Inside Out, all the time. We wouldn't know joy without pain. Right. So this idea of people come to therapy, like, I just want to stop feeling anxious. Honey, I am not going to be able to take away your anxiety.
Right.
Anxiety can be a very useful tool. It's a very, and this is just one example. What I can do is help you learn to trust that you can handle it.
Wow.
And help you learn tools to soothe yourself when it's happening. So to me, therapy is all about learning to trust and learning to tolerate discomfort.
And learning to trust, like, your inner voice. And, like, recognizing that your body is capable of, like, signaling to itself and trusting the voice of itself.
Yes.
And not, like, using our outer world as our gauge as how we should handle this thing. Like,
that's right.
We have a Holy Spirit.
If we just listen.
Right.
If we just listen. But we are taught
to
over
not
time
trust
to
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's so much feedback and noise externally, right? Like, I mean, just driving over here, right? Even just billboards, passive messaging. Well, I guess that's not super, but right, passive, explicit, implicit, whatever messaging from birth, right? Or like the movies we watch, whatever it is, that starts to lead us away from that inner knowing. Even just like what we should look like, how we should measure success. I mean, all sorts of, I could go on and on about that.
Wow.
We lose sight of our own value system too with that.
So you help us recognize who we are, like,
that's a huge part of it. Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and it's
all about, like, identity.
And to me, that is
Your
around
identity.
Values mostly, because like we said earlier, I think that who am I can feel very overwhelming and
Absolutely.
existential. And I think that's constantly evolving. So we're not going to ever come to a place where it's like, this is who you are. That doesn't feel right either or genuine. I think it's more, let's explore your values and how you're living true to those or not. Or are you operating under somebody else's value system, society's, parents, peers, whatever, and get you back to that grounded place of self.
You said earlier, Juliet, that you're helping us, like, in our stories. And that's why I think what you're saying about, like, the who am I, our chapters are going to look different.
Yes, yeah.
And that's okay.
Thank goodness.
It's part of our story.
Yes, yeah, thank goodness.
Right.
From each other, from our previous chapters, all of that. I mean, and I think that's what makes the world and humanity beautiful. Yeah, nobody wants to read the same chapter over and over. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, and there are maybe chapters we never want to read out loud again, or we don't want to, but there are also...
It could be a journal entry.
That's right.
A private journal entry.
Yes, but there are ways to frame that, and there are ways to heal from that. There are ways to create different narratives around it. I mean, that's the thing. You don't just have to close it and put it in a box, put it away, or whatever. So, yeah, but that's why I like looking at it as a story and a journey, and it's powerful.
We're all on one.
That's right.
And we're all on it together.
Yes.
Like, we're not alone in this.
Right.
And I think we forget that too. Like, we're all in a journey together. Julie, if there's anything else that you would like to speak concerning mental health and use our platform for, what would you like to share?
Gosh, yeah, I'm so grateful that you guys are highlighting it. One mantra or saying that I come back to a lot myself and in my work with clients is just to trust the process. I think that's the thing, is that we may not know why. And as humans, we want to go into that headspace to figure it out and make sense of it and all that. And like, sometimes you can, most of the time you can't. It's more about, like we've talked about, kind of coming into the body and like just trusting that it's all leading somewhere or stepping stones to something. Just trusting the process, a little bit more of letting go of the control that we humans tend to try to have over things. And that's the value of even if it's not professional therapy. I mean, ideally, again, like, I'd love everyone to go to therapy, but letting people in. We are wired to connect with each other.
Right.
And so letting people into that process with you, and you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
And so I don't know, I guess that's just, you know, we've said in a lot of different ways over the past year that it's okay to not be okay. And that's what we're trying to push. But just this other idea too of like knowing you have inherent strengths in you, all of us do.
Right.
And that, you know, letting other people help you tease that out is also a strength. It's a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much, Julia. And Charlotte Lately fam, if there's anything that I could add to that, look around to the people in your circle and to your sphere of influence and ask them. I know it might be scary and I know it might not be normal, but let's normalize it. Do you therapy? do you go to therapy? Do you have a therapist? Like don't shy away from the question, especially if you're like thinking like you might need this for yourself, because they might be able to refer you to the next part of your story. You know, so if I was to like panel the room and everybody in here and ask like, you know, who goes to therapy, we'd all probably have our hands raised. Like this is becoming a normal thing. It's a good thing. It's a great thing. And don't be afraid. Just do it. There's more of us out there who are doing it, and we're healthy for it, living our best lives. Because we finally are able to just have those conversations that really help us to define, you know, the seasons we're in, like just to bring clarity to them and understanding. Like it's a beautiful thing,
right? And of course, as you're talking, I have one more thing, but it's right like ahead, I think some of it too is if people don't feel like I need to jump to therapy too, like in those conversations with your peers and with each other, really asking somebody, how are you doing?
Really?
Or when somebody says, how are you? You don't need to like unload about, you know, but it's okay to say like, yeah, today was a stressful day.
Right.
We tend to try to like protect
we're
others.
Okay. We're fine.
Yes.
But we could go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, just keep it real a little bit more. I think that's my charge to everybody. It's just what would it be like to dip your toe into vulnerability a little bit more? A little bit more.
A little bit more.
Ooh, gosh, that's the kind of world I want to live in.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you.
Yes.
So good. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Yes.
I really, really am grateful for this
grateful.
space. Yeah.
So good.